facing a very different opponent this weekend after playing the Colgate Red Raiders, who might be and probably are the fastest, most up-tempo team in the country that wants to make you uncomfortable, even and it worked a few times even against us, and we want to run and get up and down the field as fast as humanly possible. We are now going to play against a much more structured, regimented system. Really, really well coached. Dan Shamati, what he's done at Richmond has been fantastic. And, Paul Richards, the defensive coordinator, it's a very buttoned up defense, a high IQ offense. Um, they very principled, and having gone against them every year in my time here, couldn't have more respect for what they do with their talent. So the message for our men is, okay, playing against Colgate, when we dealt with their 10-man ride and their over-aggressive pressure, there were shots galore. There were so many amazing opportunities to be had. As you saw, we took maybe 69 shots. It's going to be very different playing Richmond. Richmond, you got to win a matchup, and then you got to move the ball twice well to find an open guy so we can get a shot off. So you earn your shots, and you have to do it with expert dodging, really smart ball movement, and good off-ball motion. So it's going to be very, very different type of opponent and a really well-coached opponent.
Thank you for that, Coach. We'll go Ania Khan and then Michael.
Mute myself. Hey, Coach, how are you?
Good to see
Um,
you.
going going back to Saturday, considering the way Truitt's season ended last year, how happy were you for him to have the performance that he had on Saturday?
We were thrilled. We'd seen it in the two scrimmages earlier this season. I think he scored 7 goals in one of the scrimmages and 4 or 5 in the other. So we were not shocked that he had a big day. But it's the first real game, right? To your point, so exciting to see him be unleashed and be able to be free to cut through a defense and his teammates finding him, and then him creating some great plays himself. So yeah, for a man who had earned real minutes as a first year here and played in the Final Four last year, his second year was a real disappointment. And so what a, yeah, and you can see it too. He's got a smile on his face all the time now.
Hey coach, good to see you.
And
Um, last season you started off with 4 games against ranked opponents. You talked about how, like come to Virginia to play those big games and how you love that. This year, depending on what poll you look at, a couple of those teams are floating around the outside, but you only have 1 game out of your first 4 against a ranked team with Richmond this week. Was that intentional at all, or how do you look at that? I guess I guess it's sort of a slower start this year.
Sure, it's interesting how that worked out, right? In some cases, a little out of our control. University of Michigan, they wanted to come back, but things outside of all of our controls. The flight schedules back to Detroit changed, and they needed to spend 2 nights in Charlottesville last year. They couldn't get in and out in one night. And so, for budgetary purposes, he had to find an opponent that they could go in and out of in one night. And thus, that's why they were down in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. So, when we lost that game, it was a bit of a scramble. I was thrilled to find Colgate. My objective with scheduling is find teams that can win their conference. Find teams that will win 10 or 11 games in the regular season. One, you get to see some good teams. Two, it helps your RPI. The RPI formula, it's 50% of the RPI formula is your opponent's record. So not that scheduling is always a science, but if you can find teams, and we got another one this weekend in Richmond, who's got they're a favorite to win that conference. And Dan Shamati wins a lot of games. And so the rankings of our opponents may not be as high. Last year I think Ohio State was ranked higher in the preseason there than they are this year. Unfortunately, they took an early loss. So it wasn't intentional. And but I appreciate your question because it's holding my feet to the fire a little bit. We do want to play the toughest and most aggressive schedule we can early on. And in some ways it's there. But you're right. It's a bit of a dip it's a bit of a drop, again, having lost Michigan off the schedule.
Aiden and then Matt.
Hey coach, moving back to last Saturday again. Tucker Mullins saw his first game action since his open heart surgery. What have you enjoyed watching about his story back to the field, and what does he bring to this team on and off the field?
Yeah, Tucker Mullen is a tremendous spirit. The man has so much fun. He's always has a smile on his face. He's always laughing. Um, he he's not the class clown, but if you go up to Tucker in the locker room, or off the field, there's not going to be any tension. He's not going to raise your tension level. It's going to be a disarming smile and, hey, how you doing? Um, and that's the biggest joy of watching him play. He's just being back to who he gets to be. And I know for myself on the field for the 2 hours of practice and in the scrimmages so far, I don't see a man who's, recovering from open heart surgery. I see a lacrosse player, and because we don't talk about it, he's moved on. He's full participation, and yeah, he's making no excuses. But I'm hopeful that he can get even more minutes. He's fighting for a spot on that man up. And Tucker Mullen's a heck of a finisher. He's got some good players, surrounding him that he's got to beat out on the depth chart. But Tucker Mullen can put the ball in the back of the net. Yeah, it may not necessarily dodge by a Division I defenseman, but he is slippery and moves off ball really well. So we're hopeful, to find him some more playing time.
Coach, obviously it's early in the season, but in your first couple of games that you have on film of Richmond, how do they compare to past Richmond teams? How are they similar? How are they different? And what's it going to take against them on Saturday?
Unfortunately, they look really similar to past Richmond teams. We had some significant graduation losses, as did they. And watching them on film, I was hoping to see some chinks in the armor, but not with Shamati, Richards, and that coaching staff. They keep finding the right players to fill in holes and run their systems and run them really well. It's they play with a high IQ. Um, and they run some really good systems that are tough to attack and tough to defend. So I was hoping it was going to be a lot more different. Seeing them only give up 2 goals to Robert Morris, that's no accident, and that's not a goalie making 20 saves. It's a good goalie, don't get me wrong, Zach Vick, but that's a really tight defense. When Maryland got there to 12, Maryland had to work hard to get to 12. Maryland didn't leave a lot out there. They took advantage of the opportunities they had. So it's a really good defense. And so like I say, the challenge will be, we just played an opponent that was willing to give us 69 shots. This is an opponent that's going to cut that in half, most likely. And so our poise, you don't have to be that poised when you're running and gunning against Colgate. It's the poise is going to be key here.
Michael?
Yeah, on Saturday you mentioned that ranking system that you've been using for the goalies, and you mentioned it last year with the goalies and other positions too. Just what goes into that, and just can you describe like how how that works?
Sure. Each coach on the staff votes on Thursdays for every position, and then we'll just tabulate those votes and weight them against each other's votes. We do stat practice and we watch practice, like most coaches do, and so we can look at data there, and then we lean back on the most recent game. And so in this case, you've got 2 goalies who played, probably similarly well statistically and from what I think we all saw with our eyes. So it's a great battle. It's not being made easier. Now, we do have to wonder, do we have as many data points this week? With training, we did practice yesterday. We went at 6:30 in the morning, and we were off the field by 8:30, right before the snow started flying. And we will not really practice today, as we're waiting the fields to get plowed. But we'll have another practice on Thursday to make our final decisions for Saturday.
The goalies, is there, when you look at the both of them, do they bring different things in terms of their abilities, or is it just a similar player who's performing better? What's the
Different Different strengths. Matt Noon's 3 years of starting experience. He really is very comfortable in the 10 versus 10 picture. What I mean by that is with the clearing and riding, he just has more reps. He sees things. He's a better quarterback of the clear because of the 3 years of playing experience. Colin Morris might throw a better ball. Like, if you look thinking about a quarterback, Colin Morris can throw a 70-yard ball with a beautiful tight spiral, for the analogy there. It's just the 3 years of experience is what Matt Nunes has the advantage with the full field clearing and then the 10-man riding that we do. Um, on the flip side, Kyle Morris he's making saves. And Matt Nunes is making saves, but his save percentage right now is a bit higher. And so he's giving the defense in front of him even more confidence that they can give up certain shots. And so yeah, yeah, I could see if we were playing a certain opponent, you know, where their riding and clearing might be more critical, then Matt Nunes might have the edge.
Matt?
Coach, it's only a 1 game sample for you, but we talked about in the preseason how faceoff might be a bit of a work in progress, especially early in the season. What was your assessment of how those guys collectively performed on Saturday? And then when you have that question mark, I guess if you want to call it that, going into the season, how much more important are your wingers? Especially Ben Ware and Noah Chismar, but the depth there as well. How much more important are those guys?
Sure, that's a great question. How we played Saturday against Colgate is the best we've played. And when I think about all the scrimmages, the one in the fall and the two we had in January, and so we were thrilled that how Saturday went against Colgate. Getting us over 60%. Anthony Gabriel winning so many, and Andrew Greenspan getting his share. Um, so yeah, that was a big positive because again, I hadn't seen us do that in their first couple scrimmages. Um, the second part of your question, there's no question how important the wing play is. And to have the best LSM coming in off the wings and Ben Ware is a huge advantage to us. So there will be days, and Saturday against Colgate was one of them, where our faceoff men were able to win the ball clean and pick up the ball themselves, as highlighted by Anthony Gabriel's assist to McCabe Millen to start the second quarter. But for those days where it's a scrap, and maybe we got to counter a really good opponent and just make it a mucky 3v3 ground ball. Boy, we were fortunate to have Ben Ware flying in there. We're still trying to figure out their short stick middies. You did get to see Will Spurt and Mac Till pick up some tough ground balls and run through triple teams a couple times on Saturday. And Joey Terenzi will hopefully start getting even more reps. But yeah, we got to be better with a face-off wing play with that short stick midi.
Aiden?
Yeah, you touched on it a little bit at the end of that last question. Looking at the two-way midfielders, do you have any update on Terenzi? And then looking at Hudson Hossman's performance, what do you think of him and how you're developing him into that next two-way midfielder at EVA?
Sure. Yeah, Terenzi, he's again, it's still day by day, that as he's continuing to rehabilitate it to himself, luckily we were able to get him to play some against Colgate, and it seemed to go fine. We'll keep checking in with the training staff and what they want to do with him. And because you're right, he's so important to us. He can do things at both ends of the field, the middle of the field. Hudson Houseman is, he would be that heir apparent. He is a guy that we want to become a two-way. I was glad he was able to get some good minutes, earned an assist on Saturday against Colgate. It's a lot learning our defense and then having to go to the offensive end and learn what Coach Cassis is doing at the offensive end. And he's doing well. Yesterday's practice, he scored a couple goals playing offense. And so it does remind me of a young Terenzi, an emerging talent. Now, granted, a young Terenzi redshirted. Joey redshirted his first year. Hudson's not redshirting. And so there's a lot he's trying to grasp, but watch for him slowly, and but surely get better.
Michael?
You talked a little bit about your defense on Saturday, but not a whole lot. Just, how do you feel about your defense so far, and how do you think they played on Saturday?
I'm still very grateful for the veterans, for the experience that we're able to put on the field, led by George Fulton doing a lot of communicating, but Griffin Kaloji and Ben Ware certainly, and Tommy McNeil. Max Wooten's been here a bunch. He comes in a little bit as well. I do think we're playing with a lot of high intellect. What I think we got to be better at is our on-ball defense. There were some times on Saturday against Colgate, we were not getting in that bent knee position. The analogy of slap the basketball court, get down and bent knee, and let's play some defense, right? And we got to be better at that. So that was a main focus on Tuesday's practice at 6:30 a.m. is getting that bent knee position. So we got to be better with our on ball. And I think it's correctable. It's not that it's incorrectable. It's just some of our defenders are trying to make plays. And when you're trying to make a play, you're not in a squat position ready to defend. You're up here trying to hit the opponent's stick and knock the ball out. So that's where we got to get better at.
Any other questions for Coach Tiffany?
You want to get the guys out there shoveling snow this morning?
I know the plows are doing a heck of a job on the lower field turf, our practice field where I normally see you guys. That's a question for Klockner. I don't know. Apparently, you don't shovel. You definitely don't plow, Klockner, and apparently you don't shovel it either unless you want to spend $25,000 on a work crew. I know there's a lot of snow fell here. We'll see what it looks like. I think I'm being told Thursday night they're going to make it some sort of decision, whether it's a temporary decision or not, of how much snow is melted.